Okay, let's get going. So the changes you'll make are in 3 different areas. The first is in Elementor's settings panel. The second is in the WordPress customizer. And the final tweak just involves a tiny bit of code that we also put in the customizer. And don't worry, codophobes, it's really easy. Copy and paste. Okay, so let's first have a look in the Elementor's settings panel. Now, job number 1 is to tick both boxes for disable global colors and disable global fonts. Why? Well, we set our basic global styles for the whole site in the theme within the customizer. You know, these styles are usually related to your client's branding, fonts, font sizes, colors, things like that. Now, if we leave those 2 boxes unticked, then Elementor also loads its own global fonts and colors too. So it's like a double whammy of code. There are 3 big problems if that happens. 1, your site has a ton of code that it doesn't need, a ton of extra code. That makes things slow. We don't like slow sites. 2 is that you've got to set all your typography and color settings in 2 places now, and that duplicates your effort. We don't like extra work if we can help it. And 3 is that it's much harder to know where your styling rules are coming from. You don't know if a particular font setting or color on the site, if it's coming from Elementor or from GeneratePress, and they're both fighting against each other. So if your main styles are all in the theme, meaning in the customizer where they should be, you've only got one place to look. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't override these global settings on an individual basis within Elementor. Far from it. Go nuts making custom style settings on individual elements in Elementor. That's fine. But this setting just makes sure that your sort of basic global branding defaults, global styles, they're just in one place. It's the right way to do it. And job number 2 here is just to set your content width. Now, this tells Elementor how wide you want its content to be, which is fairly obvious. And it's at 1140 pixels by default. You can change it to whatever you like. But the reason I mention it is you just need to make a note of this setting, because we'll need to make sure that GeneratePress uses the exact same setting. Unless you want wonky layouts, of course, in which case make them different. But otherwise, they need to be the same. Don't forget to save changes. And now we'll head to the customizer. Now, you can get to the WordPress customizer in one of 2 ways. You can either click on Customize from the admin bar at the top of any page, or in the WordPress backend, you can go to Appearance and then Customize. I'm in the UK, so mine's spelt with an S. I won't get into a fight here about the right way to spell it. So here's where you make all your theme style changes anyway, all your GeneratePress style changes. Now, remember, these are all the global styles that the site uses by default, unless you override them later on in specific parts of your layouts. Firstly, click Layout, and then into Container. So we'll deal with the container layout first. Now, within the container, firstly, make sure the content width setting is the same as you set in Elementor settings just then. Content layout, I tend to leave as one container. If you choose separate containers, this is just how the theme, it puts the columns and the sidebar widgets and things in separate boxes, separate containers. And this is only really an issue on pages created by GeneratePress only. Personally, I've found separate containers harder to style, certainly harder to style consistently. I had issues with blog layouts, for example, where I just couldn't maintain those nice 20 pixel column gaps like I can with one container. It's maybe because I'm an idiot, but I just like it like this anyway. Feel free to experiment. Set separating space to 20 pixels. Remember, I said Elementor's columns typically have that gap of 20 pixels between them. Content padding is just the space created around your page content. Now, this setting doesn't apply if on any given page you've got the full width content page builder integration tick box ticked. But on pages where you don't have that ticked, then these settings kick in. The top and bottom padding is your own preference, really. The right and left padding is 20 pixels, and this is actually going to be the same left and right padding that we'll set on the header in a moment, and it will also be the same padding that we set on all of Elementor's elements too. So, and because it's the same gap we have between columns as well, it's a nice grid. But for now, just set right and left padding at 20 pixels. Mobile content padding is, you guessed it, 20 pixels. Now, in an imminent update to GeneratePress, you'll actually be able to set this mobile padding as top, right, bottom and left as well. I mean, right now, it's one size fits all, but it does the job for our purposes here right now. Okay, so let's hit back. We're still in layout. We're still in the customizer. We're still in layout, so we'll click through to header. We're going to make some similar changes here. Now, most of these settings on this page just depend on your own design, but the header padding at the bottom, left and right padding, 20 pixels. I'm sure I don't have to explain why now. Hit back, pop into sidebars. Now, personally, I don't bother adding padding to the kind of like the inside of sidebar widgets. If your design needs it, you might have widgets that have got all, they've got a nice kind of grey background colour on them, or a background colour on them of some kind, and you would need to add a bit of padding to give the text a bit of room to breathe. Then, by all means, set some padding, but it actually doesn't matter for our purposes here, but I just wanted to show you. Hit back again, and finally into the footer layout settings. All you need to do, whiz down to the bottom, and just make sure that your right and left padding is also 20 pixels. All of this just makes sure that everything lines up nicely, regardless of whether it was created by the theme or the page builder. It gives you a nice consistent breathing, that 20 pixels breathing room on smaller screens as well. I'll show you how to set this in Elementor in a moment, but that's everything done in the theme. While we're here, I will say that I generally don't use GeneratePress's own footer. I actually turn it off by setting the footer widgets to 0. Instead, I usually create my footers using Elementor's library, and then you can make that library item, that footer library item that you've designed. You can make that appear at the bottom of every page with that library item's shortcode placed in GeneratePress's hooks page. Now, you can do this with Elementor Pro if you've got a license for that, or there's a plugin called Anywhere Elementor, so you can use that if you've not got Elementor Pro. So if we just look at my site as it is at the moment anyway, if you look at the footer, we'll scroll down to there. Now, I wouldn't have been able to create this particular design in GeneratePress, well, not without a lot of custom code and head scratching, whereas it was really easy in Elementor. So just to quickly explain how that's done. Okay, so this is a good time to hit save if you've made any changes, and that makes your changes live. Now that we've sorted Elementor and Customizer, the last thing to do is just add a little bit of additional styling code. Now don't panic, it's really not difficult. Firstly, we need to actually grab the code itself. So if you just scroll down the page that this video is on, and all the way down, you'll see this box here. Now all you need to do is just click inside that box. Just make sure that you highlight all the code. So all the way from line 1, all the way down to the very, very last line. And once it's highlighted, copy it. And then once we've got that in the clipboard, we're going to hop back into the customizer, and we're going to click through to additional CSS. Paste in the code. Once you've done all that, you can hit save again, and that's it. Job done. Okay, so at this point, you can pat yourself on the back, walk away, celebrate with a cold beer or something. But if you're wondering what that bit of code does, then you can stick around and I'll show you in the next video. If you don't care what the code does, then feel free to stop now. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you very much.